I've studied Hinduism all my life. I thought I'd never become a Muslim. Being a female in an Indian society, accepting Islam is a very big thing because you never know what might happen. My parents have no clue that I have accepted Islam. Even if I tell them, they'll abandon me. I was in the practicing stage and I was not able to practice in my household because it is very difficult. This friend of mine gave me a proposal that why don't you marry me? We ran and got married in a hotel. I was living at his house. So again, these people did not want me in their house. So I left the house and I was staying in again a girls' hostel. I was all alone. I had no contact with him. He has blocked me. If it was not for Allah, I don't know what I would have done in my life.
Will you share your full revert story with us?
Absolutely, with pleasure. So I am an Indian. I live in an Indian society where accepting Islam is pretty difficult. And when you are exposed to Islam and you finally realize the truth of life, the purpose of your life, and it's very difficult for us to accept it in front of the society. So for me, it was very difficult. I am 24 years old right now. And when I was a child, I had a pretty basic childhood, not that fancy and not that average. So I was somewhere in the middle. My parents are pure Hindu. They, I wouldn't say dislike Islam, but they are not a big fan. So all my childhood, all my teenage, I was living under a rock. I had no clue about Islam. Though I was raised in a Hindu household, my schooling was from a Christian and Catholic school. So I was pretty much, I was influenced by my Christian friends, my Catholic friends, and I found this religion, Christianity and Catechism, very interesting. So I used to read a lot of books. I did read Bible in my school days. So I was pretty much influenced by this Christianity part, though I was not that practicing of my own religion. So I did not practice Hinduism that much as I was influenced by Christianity during my childhood, during my school days. So my friends, they were Christians, so they used to tell me stories about different prophets and how they lived their lives. So I was pretty much influenced by all the prophets and all the characters they used to talk about. And then I did think of getting myself baptized and changing my religion from Hinduism to Christianity. So this was pretty much when I was 16, 17. And then one day I stood up and asked one of my Christian friends, hey, I feel like there's so much more in Christianity. I want to be a part of it. I really find this religion interesting. And then she was the one to introduce me to Christianity, and I was on the verge of getting baptized when a friend of mine popped in, and that's when things changed. So I did tell him about my status of how I'm about to change my religion from Hinduism to Christianity. So that's where he popped in and he said that, okay, before you do that, let me introduce you to one more religion so that you can bifurcate among all the religions and choose the best for you, choose what's the truth. So I thought to myself, okay, I've studied Hinduism all my life since I was a child. And during all this time, I did read a lot of books. For example, the Hindu scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and all the other Vedas and Upanishads. I did not read it all of it because there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of things to read and a lot of things to go through. So I went through it so that I could get a gist of all of the things, all of the books. And then later on, I read Bible, which I thought is a little confusing because Bible again has a lot of variations, a lot of other versions. So it was kind of confusing for me. So I thought, okay, let's give all these holy scriptures a try. Let's take a taste of all these books and then let's decide for what's the best. So I kept Quran for the end. I said that, okay, I'll read Quran at the last. I don't want to begin my reading process with Quran. So I thought I'd never become a Muslim. So I kept it for the last. So Quran was my last resort. So I started reading Hindu scriptures first since I am from a Hindu background. So I thought I'd give it a try. I read the Hindu scriptures. I understood what idea Hinduism comes from. And again, after reading a couple of books, I was surrounded with all of these doubts and questions. So my boat was nowhere. It was in the middle of an ocean and I had nowhere to go. So I stopped reading all these Hindu scriptures. I moved on to Bible. So I was introduced to Christianity and hence I had to read the Bible to understand the plot. And again, Bible has many versions. So I was not sure which one is the legitimate one and which one to begin with. So I gave it a try. I read the Bible. Yet again, I found myself in a position of, in a room full of doubts. I had nowhere to go. So at last, I came to Quran. I thought, okay, this is my last resort. Let's give it a try. So I went through Quran. I read it from the start, from Surah Fatiha to Surah Baqarah and everything. And I just could not stop reading. I completed the entire book in like 2 to 3 days. And yet again, I had questions. But this time, these questions had answers. So I was in a boat surrounded with ocean and I had a path I can navigate through to reach my destination. So that's where I found and I bifurcated that, okay, I think Islam it is, Quran it is. And these both are the key to the real true purpose of life. So that's where I really emphasized on this fact that Islam is the one religion for me, is the true religion for me, and I can actually live by the principles and by all the lessons what Quran has taught. So that's where I started reading Quran. I was introduced to Islam. I was invited to Islam by one of my friends, and he explained to me everything step by step. So it's very overwhelming when you are exposed to truth of life. This is an entire other world, another universe. Like the universe you are born and brought up from, and then you are given this truth of life, the purpose of life, and then your entire universe and your entire world shifts. So it was very overwhelming for me for the first time to realize and digest all these facts. I was living under a stone. So it was not that I already had a knowledge of Islam and how things work. So after being invited to Islam, after this person giving me Quran and walking me through Quran and introducing all of these pillars of Islam to me, that's how I thought to myself, okay, I think this is the time. I will take Shahada. So I took Shahada. First, I took Shahada all alone, all by myself, only in the presence of Allah and myself. Because I thought to myself that I don't need anyone as such to any jury or any witnesses other than me and Allah, because it's between me and Allah. And also being a female in an Indian society, accepting Islam is a very big thing because you never know what might happen. And also, my parents have no clue that I am a practicing Muslim. I have accepted Islam because even if I tell them, they'll abandon me. So that's why I've never accepted or confronted my parents that I am a Muslim and I have accepted Islam. So it was difficult in the initial days for me to practice because I was in the learning phase. I used to read Quran every day. I was practicing how to pray. So we have to pray 5 times. And again, we have voluntary prayers. We can pray or it's on us if we want to go for it. So I was in the practicing stage and I was not able to practice in my household because it is very difficult to exclude yourself from your family and get yourself all alone in a room and pray because my household is a very happening household and I am wanted by my parents all the time. So it's difficult for me to excuse myself for the prayers at least 5 times a day. So the friend of mine who introduced Islam to me, um, he gave me an offer for marriage, so nikah. So for that purpose, I um, left my house. Basically, I ran away from my house and I lived in a hostel.
Really quickly, before we get back to the episode, would you like to achieve financial freedom and retire sooner? Because I found a statistic that says 93% of Muslims are not on track to retire before the age of 60. And this is because of 3 reasons. 1, they're not investing their money. 2, they don't know how to invest their money into assets that are Sharia compliant. And 3, they don't know what platform to use to start investing. Now, I have a solution to all 3 of these problems, and it's the sponsor of this podcast. Wahed is a platform that allows you to invest your money into 100% Sharia compliant assets so your wealth can start growing without you doing any extra work. They offer ways for you to invest into gold, real estate, halal stocks, and even sukuk, all from your phone. If you're wanting to start investing so you can retire sooner, go perform Hajj, spend more time with your family, or just have the freedom to worship Allah without having to ask your boss, then I highly recommend you go to wahed.com/canyon or the link in the description to start halal investing today. If you use code CANYON when setting up your account, they'll give you a $10 bonus once you deposit your first $100 into your account. That is wahed.com/canyon or the link in the description. Let's get back to the episode.
And I lived in a hostel, a girls' hostel, for like 2 to 3 months. And my parents were all worried about me, that why and how did I take such a big step? Is it because of the guy who has influenced me into all these things? So they were all worried, but somehow I explained to them that I need to be alone for a little while. I need some space and I'll come back home. Then I find it comfortable enough to be with them. So all these 2 to 3 months, I was living in a girls' hostel. I was practicing Islam. I learned how to pray. I learned how to fast. I read all the books. I read the Quran and all the stories about all our prophets. And then I was practicing and I was learning. And this friend of mine gave me a proposal that, why don't you marry me? We'll get married. So it'll be easy for you to practice Islam, and also you'll be introduced to a Muslim culture or a Muslim background of a family, and you'll find it pretty cool. So I accepted this offer. So I thought, okay, I'll trust this man. Then we both, without our parents' knowledge, we ran and got married. We did nikah in a hotel, and that's where our journey started. So he told his parents, but I was not allowed to tell my parents because it would have been a big disaster, since we live in an Indian society and it's very difficult for us to explain such sensitive things to our parents. So that's how we got married. We shifted to a house, and where he's a practicing Muslim. He did teach me a couple of things. And then I used to practice my prayers and my Islam journey. And then later on, things were not that good. So this person I married to was not the one who was not that one who actually explained me. He was good at certain point of time, and I really believed him. So from a woman's perspective, it's difficult to judge a person when someone's being so good to you at your lowest point of time, and then suddenly their gesture, their behavior, everything changes towards you. So when I went through all of this situation in my life, that I had to leave my family, I had to leave my career, I had to give up everything just to be with this man. And I had thought to myself, and I had also accepted the fact that, okay, now I've begun a new journey and there's no looking back, and I will adhere to this to the best of my ability. Not for me, not for him, not for anybody, but just for Allah, because Allah has given me a new life, this opportunity where I need to do my best so that I could reach the final destination, which is Jannah. So whatever hardships I'm going through, it has a reason and I'll be rewarded for that. So all along, all this while, I had this feeling, this thought in my mind that, okay, whatever I'm doing, all the hardships I'm facing is going to be rewarded at some point of time. And Allah it sees everything. He sees even a small tear from my eyes. So I kept swallowing all my worries, all my anxiety, and every sorrow in my life, just in the hope that one day this hardship is going to be rewarded and I'll be granted Jannah. So I digested everything, all the abuses, all the disrespect, everything. I have no words. I don't know how to describe this situation, but it was very difficult for me living away from your parents when you're just 22, 23. And then, um, you've got people insulting you, keeping names, abusing you, and also physically assaulting you. So it's a lot for a woman to take. And at a young age, it's very difficult. But then I digested every part of this negative situation and I did it for Allah because I still know that I'm still adamant on the fact that all of my hardship is going to get rewarded and my final destination would be Jannah. So after me being married to this person, we lived for like 1 year and I had no intervention from my family. So all of the intervention which was done was from his family. So they were not very welcoming towards me. They did not teach me anything about Islam. Um, all I did was learn from a few friends online. So I started learning Arabic. So I started learning Arabic, which is from the Quran. So the authentic Arabic from a teacher of mine. She used to teach me online every morning after Fajr Salah. So I kept up with such things. I seeked other people for knowledge. I used to listen to their lectures, lecture on how a woman can deal with things. A married woman can deal with things like her in-laws, her husband, and other things. And especially being a revert, how to tackle all these hardships with with Allah and with the Quran and with the knowledge that one day all of these hardships will be rewarded and Allah's help is always near and Allah will always reward the best from the sources we have never imagined. So I kept all of these things in my mind, and that's how I started being with this person. And I acknowledged everything. I acknowledged every insult, every abuse, every every other negative thing which was kept on my plate. I welcomed everything. So at this point of time, I was hopeless. I did not expect any good from nobody, not my family, because I was not even in contact with them, not even my ex-husband's parents, because they were not that practicing. So I would not expect them to be in a way that is like that's good or that's what a practicing Muslim would do. So I accepted all these facts and then I moved on. And one fine day, my ex-mother-in-law, she comes up to me and she tells me that I don't think you and your husband or my son are a good match. You should have never got married and all of these bitter things. And I thought to myself that I left my family, I left my career, I am all alone by myself, and now I just have my husband to lean on. He is my support and he is my guide, and I have to stick to him no matter what and how he is. So somehow she convinced my husband to leave me and she convinced me to give him a khula. So khula is something a female or a woman gives it to her husband. So I had no knowledge. I did not even know what khula is. So this part of Islam I have just begun to study and I had no knowledge of it as much as deep as these people knew. So I did not even know what khula was. So I signed on a paper and the khula happened and that's when I got to know that okay, now we're separated. So then again, I was living at his house. So again, these people did not want me in their house. So I left the house and I was staying in again a girls' hostel. From there, I was all alone. I had no contact with him. He has blocked me all over and everything. His family has blocked me everywhere. And I did not even have my family by my side. So I was living all alone. I had no job. I had nothing at all. I had no money. I had nothing. I had zero. Like my bank balance was zero. I had no friends, nobody to rely on. Yet I kept this hope and faith alive in me that no, I know I'm in the middle of all this chaos and there's going to be a way out of it. And so one day I was sleeping during afternoon and my phone rang. And that's when I saw that my mother is calling me. And she spoke to me out of nowhere. And this was the biggest ray of hope I could ever expect in this point of time. She said, she called me. She said, "What are you doing? How are you doing? Where are you? I miss you and I want you home." And this was the time I was so happy, so grateful, and so glad that I explained her everything, whatever I went through. She said, "Okay, whatever you're doing right now, stop it. Me and your father are coming to pick you." So after this phone call, I cried my heart out because I had lost hope. I had nowhere to go to. And a miracle like this appearing out of nowhere was the sign that Allah has always been so close to me, has kept me so close to Him that no matter what difficult state I am in, there's always a miracle around the corner waiting for me to cry out loud to Allah, to ask for help, and help is always around the corner. So from that point of time, I never lost hope. I am always so sure that Allah's help is always around the corner and there's nothing to worry about. So these instances in my life has always kept me so adamant on Islam, and it's still so adamant. And today, right now, I am at my parents' place. I have a job. Alhamdulillah. I'm earning for myself. I'm keeping my family happy. Though I'm divorced, I have no acquaintances or no contact with my husband, ex-husband, and his family. But I'm doing well for myself right now. Alhamdulillah, I'm at a better place right now, even though I'm with my family who are not Muslims. But yet I can make space for myself and excuse myself at this point of time and practice Islam, pray for my good well being, and pray for my family's well being. So it's a miracle that that day, that phone call was a big miracle that happened in my life. And my parents accepted me back again, yet I did wrong. I agree. I hurt them in a way that they don't expect a daughter to hurt them that much. So they took me back into the family again. I am treated well. I am respected. They don't treat me different, or they have not unloved me. So everything is same. It's better, alhamdulillah. And my parents are proud of me because the kind of life I lived before and the life I'm living right now, they are really proud of me, and I'm so much grateful and thankful to Allah and for myself that I did not give up at any point of time. I kept fighting, I kept striving, not just for myself, but for the truth. That's all.
That is very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. I would love if you could highlight for us, what do most people not understand about what it's like being a Muslim in India right now?
Right. So being a Muslim in India is very difficult, regardless you're a man or a woman, because I think it's more easy for a man to accept Islam and to share it publicly. Because as a woman, if I expose it or if I share my story publicly, not just with Muslims but also with non-Muslims, the first thing they're going to say that I am deluded, I am the black sheep who got away from her religion, and I don't have the knowledge, or I am just blindly going and following another religion because I did not explore the religion I am born into. That's all the things they say, and they just abandon you from the society. They say that, okay, this woman has accepted Islam, now she's untouchable. We'll not speak to her. We'll not talk to her. We have no contact. We'll have no contact with her whatsoever. So they just exclude you from the society. So it's difficult for a woman to live in an Indian society, especially as a revert, because we have people who keep names, who would try to harm you, who would try to take advantage of you in a way you could never imagine. So it's a little horrifying and it's a little disturbing as well. So that's the reason I have kept it to myself, and not even my family knows that I'm a revert. But a few friends of mine who are Muslims, they do understand my story and they support me to the fullest.
That's gotta be tough. So even moving back in with your family, right now living with them, they don't know you're Muslim?
No, they don't know.
That's gonna be hard. Hmm. So, do you think you'd ever tell them?
I do think about it all the time, but whenever I think about it, I feel that this is not the right point of time. And I do pray for them that may Allah soften their hearts to accept this fact and also bring them to Islam one day. So whenever the time is right, whenever I feel it in my heart that yes, now it's a good time for me to let them know or confront them that I'm a Muslim now, I'd definitely do it. But as of now, I would keep it hidden.
How are you staying steadfast during this whole thing, right? Like in an environment where you can't really outwardly be Muslim, you have to practice in silence. I have a team member who's Indian Muslim, and he was talking about how during Eid, they're all having, when they were doing a sacrifice, like they're having to hide and do it in private where no one could see them, because if someone saw them, it'd cause a huge issue. So I'm really curious, in this circumstance, like what keeps you going? What keeps you still having faith?
So it's a very good question. Thank you for asking. So hardships are a sign. Difficulties in one's life are a sign that you're the closest to Allah. You're the closest soldier to Allah, because if you have hardships in your life and you know your way out through it, through prayer, through reading Quran, through all the pillars you'll follow, so these are your ways you can outcome, or you can tackle all these hardships in your life. And this is the only way of being steadfast in this religion, because Allah's help is always near. And that's what I've been doing. Whenever I feel low or lost, I stick to prayer, I read the Quran, I hang out with my Muslim friends, and we all talk about how hardships and how difficulties in a person's life get one closer to Allah.
That's very powerful. That takes very high iman to realize that struggles sometimes mean we're more loved. And I love the fact that you see the long-term vision of this. It sounds like you've been able to slightly detach from the dunya, right? A lot of people, when they're in bad situations, they're too attached to the dunya. They think it's going to go on forever. And my friend who's an imam was actually telling me this. He's like, when we were kids and we'd break our toy, and it'd be the worst thing ever, right? Our toy was broken, right? And we'd freak out for a whole day, and we'd let it ruin our day. And now, being adults, we reflect and we're like, how stupid was I? Why was I upset about a toy breaking? And my friend was telling me we're going to feel the exact same way when we look at the dunya, right? We'll go, how was I worried about this? It was so small. And it's so important for us to constantly remember that no matter how hard things are, no matter what we're going through, this is going to be a sliver of a sliver of a sliver of our
Absolutely.
entire life.
Absolutely. Because we cry over a pixel and we forget, or we don't realize that Allah has the entire picture. And we still cry over that little tiny pixel we have of our life. So I'm happy that I was able to get out of all these hardships with the help of Allah. Because if it was not Islam, if it was not for Allah, I don't know what I would have done in my life.
I have a closing question I do on this podcast. If you had a microphone and you could speak into this microphone and every single person in the world would hear what you say, what would you say?
That's it. I'll have to think about it.
Nobody has an answer immediately. Everyone always has to think on that question.
So all I want to say is no deed, no good deed goes to waste. It's always stored in the unseen and you are rewarded from the unseen. So we always ought to watch our deeds. We need to fix the way we look at our lives. And also we should be aware of the fact that we are always being watched by this unseen force, and we should not indulge in any wrong, not in the presence of Allah.
Very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
The pleasure's all mine.